Hey you. Yes, you. Do you remember The Batman? No, not that one. This one. It was a pretty interesting show. One that ran for 65 episodes across 5 seasons from 2004 to 2008. Did you know The Batman also had its own feature-length movie? A pretty good one too, where Batman fought his arch-nemesis, Dracula. The Batman, like I said, it was an interesting show, man, and one I think that people tend to forget about, and it's not hard to see why. It was the first Batman cartoon to come out after The New Adventures of Batman, considered by many, myself included, to be the best interpretation of Batman across any medium. Yes, that includes the comics too. And it's not like Beta's Batman was gone from television screens when this show was airing either. Beta's Bats was still front and center on TV screens in Justice League and Justice League Unlimited while this show was still airing. It's not that the Batman was any lesser of a show, not at all, it was just standing in the shadow of a giant. The Batman, like X-Men Evolution, was a cartoon that just kind of did its own thing, went in its own direction, creatively speaking. It didn't really care about the continuity. This show wasn't trying to ape Beta's, it was trying to blaze its own path, make its own mark. Beta's was the darker, more mature take on Batman. The Batman was lighter, less noir-inspired, more light-hearted in some ways. These aren't criticisms, by the way, quite the opposite. They're compliments. When any property gets readapted, I don't want to see the same ground covered again. I want to see something different. I want the creatives involved to do their own thing. Remix the elements, so to speak. Give me something I haven't seen before. And that's what the Batman was. A totally new take on the character. This was a continuity where Batman's first sidekick wasn't Robin. It was Batgirl. This Bruce Wayne wasn't as tortured or as haunted a figure as Kevin Conroy's Batman. No, this guy was significantly more chill. Hell, this guy even used to listen to pop music while he was at the opera. He had a friend he used to shoot hoops with. In this universe, Bane is a freakishly large monster that Batman can only fight with the aid of a mech suit. Here the Penguin is a physical threat to Batman and can actually hold his own in a fight. This is how the Joker is typically portrayed in the comics, and this is what the Joker looks like in this continuity. Mr. Freeze isn't a tragic villain who is just trying to save his wife in this series. No, here, he's a car thief. Okay, look, I'm not saying every change was creatively brilliant, but the writers were trying to do something different, and I appreciate that, man, I'm here for it. If you want to know how different this take on Batman really was, just throw on that intro music. That theme evokes a lot of things, man, but none of them are Batman. The Batman was a different Batman show for a different audience, and a new generation of Batman fans. And it wasn't just the writers who were trying to do something new either. The character designs and animation were totally unique. We'd never seen Batman and the usual cast of characters or Gotham done like this before. The art direction for this show is so different from Beta's that it feels like the animators wanted to make a point of it. The fight scenes in Batman the Animated Series and the New Adventures of Batman were slower, more grounded, more realistic. They had that old school fisticuffs vibe, more what you would typically associate with Batman. The fight scenes on The Batman, though, feel more frenetic, like something you would see in an anime, with characters bouncing off walls and backflipping all over the place. But I don't want to talk about how The Batman differs from Beta's. No, what I want to talk about today is one episode of this show in particular. Season 4, Episode 7, Artifacts, written by Greg Weisman. Who is Greg Weisman? Well, funny you should ask. He's only the guy who co-developed the Spectacular Spider-Man animated series, co-created Gargoyles, co-developed a small show called Young Justice. I don't know, maybe you've heard of that one. Co-developed Max Steel, a personal favorite. Oh yeah, and he wrote all of these. Why am I talking about this episode in particular? Well, Artifacts always seemed to me like an episode at odds with the rest of the series tonally. Remember how I said that Batman had a lighter tone than Beta's? Well, Artifacts almost feels like an episode of Beta's by comparison. Artifacts is a dark episode, man, but not in the ways you might think, and it paints a pretty bleak picture of the future for this lighter tone Batman. Like with the Teen Titans episode How Long Is Forever. Hey, maybe go check out that episode too. I spent a bunch of time on it and it got absolutely zero traction. Just saying. Artifacts also deals with a significant time jump. Actually, it has 2 time jumps. In a first for the series, this episode is split across 2 time periods. The first taking place 20 years on in the future from the present, and the second taking place 1,000 years on from that first time jump. Got all that? No, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to spoil the episode for you. I mean, shit, it's been out for over 20 years. If you haven't got around to it by now, you're probably just not going to get around to it. But still, it's a great 22 minutes of television. You should check it out. Well, I'm not going to get into spoilers. I'll give you a rough sketch of what happens in the episode. Artifacts, like I said, is split across 2 timelines. The main story plays out 20 years on from the present, so 2027, the far future. This is what I want to talk about. The Gotham we know has changed. Things look to have gotten a lot worse. Robin's become Nightwing, Barbara has become Oracle, and Batman's gone from looking like this to looking like this. And the changes aren't just physical either. His personality, which was usually pretty optimistic, even upbeat, has undergone a pretty drastic change. He's a lot more jaded here, gruffer, and just generally more angry sounding. What struck me about this episode as a kid was the influences that Wiseman drew on when writing this episode. I mean, shit, it's not like he was shy about hiding them.
The Dark Knight returns.
Using The Dark Knight Returns as the template for the future of this universe, I mean, of all the potential future Batman stories Wiseman could have drawn on, The Dark Knight Returns is probably one of the darkest. It feels the most incompatible with the tone of this series. And that's not a criticism. As it turns out, slamming this much lighter toned universe through the mold of The Dark Knight Returns was a stroke of genius. When I was rewatching this episode for this video, I remember this one scene from the season 4 finale between Bruce Wayne and John Jones. It always stuck out to me. It's the diner scene, where Bruce admits that he sometimes thinks he might be better off if he didn't have any sidekicks at all, and just worked alone.
I'm stunned. You have partners?
I do, though sometimes I wonder if things might be easier without them.
And I always found this line so interesting, because it was a peek into the mind of this Bruce Wayne, how he might actually regret having taken on partners. Up to that point, I never thought this guy minded having the help, but after taking on 2 proteges, he's since questioned if that was the right thing to do. On rewatch, knowing how this Batman ends up, this diner scene gets recontextualized. This older Batman isn't without partners. He's got Oracle in his ear, but he's alone when he's out in the field. After Dick moved on and became Nightwing, and Barbara was paralyzed, Bruce never took on another Robin. There's no Jason Todd or Tim Drake in this continuity. This guy just went back to doing this job alone. And sure, Nightwing is on this mission helping out, but Nightwing's presence on this mission isn't exactly welcomed by Bruce. I'm not getting the impression that these guys are working together all that much, or even communicating often. Writing future Batman stories can be a difficult thing. I've been a fan of this character my entire life, and I still can't definitively say how I'd like to see Bruce's story end. Bruce just keeping on as Batman till his death feels really in character for him. Alternatively, I could see Bruce hanging up the cape when he realizes he physically just can't do this anymore, and it would be irresponsible for him to keep on going. I could also see him just being totally consumed by his worst tendencies and driving everyone away, like on Batman of the Future, living alone. There's a part of me that really loves the idea of Bruce just retiring, getting married and settling down with Selina, and learning to enjoy life, finally dying as an old man having found that happiness he deserved after such a difficult life. That would be a beautiful ending, man. I wouldn't have any problem with that. What I'm trying to say is that Bruce doesn't have to have a sad or tragic ending. His future doesn't have to be a bleak one. It can be optimistic. It can be hopeful. If you'd asked me as a kid before I watched this episode where I thought this Batman would be 20 years on in this continuity, this is not what I would have guessed. Being honest, considering how laid back this version of Bruce was, and how lighter the tone of this series was, honestly, I could have seen this guy being married, or at least in a long-term relationship with someone, probably Selina, and still operating as Batman. Bare minimum, I would have said this guy would have always worked with a Robin. Why? This guy, this Bruce, seemed to be the most stable of all the interpretations, the most well-adjusted. He always, to me at least, came across as a guy who had come to terms with the deaths of his parents. He never struck me as a guy who was haunted in the same way that Bruce is typically portrayed. These guys, they're all at their core pretty damaged dudes. They're carrying some serious baggage, major trauma. This guy in particular, he's probably the most damaged of all of them. This one though, actually pretty chill. We didn't ever see this guy kneeling at the graves of his parents in the pouring rain, like Conroy's Batman. I always got the impression that this guy had moved on from that stage of grief. He managed to come to terms with what happened, and managed to build a meaningful life for himself. He built friendships, not as a form of cover, but because he legitimately liked people and spending time with them. You know how Conroy's Batman, Take a Shot, used to feel like a totally different guy when he was Batman and when he was out in public as Bruce Wayne? That Bruce had basically split his life in two, concocting this fake persona of a playboy to hide his real personality. In The Batman, I never really felt Bruce's personality shift between Bruce and Batman. When he was speaking with Alfred in or outside of the costume, he just felt like the same guy. as if there was no distinction between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Sure, he was more stoic when in costume, his voice was deeper, but that was about as far as the differences went. Bruce isn't the mask here. For the first time ever, the mask is the actual mask. Batman is the alter ego, not Bruce Wayne. I feel like this guy had his Kilmer Batman Forever moment at some point before this show started. He's not doing this job out of obligation. He's doing it because he chooses to, or maybe to honor his parents. He's not doing this out of vengeance. His personality just doesn't reflect that. He's not a vengeful guy at all. In this episode you see Dick, you see Barbara and Alfred too. But you know what you don't hear from any of these guys? Annie mentioned that Bruce has a life outside of all this, of a wife or kids. Barbara and Dick both tell Bruce he's getting too old for this, that he needs to pass the torch and to step down. But no, he's still out there doing this, because he, like so many other Batmen, just can't stop. He won't let it go, because the mission is his life now. Like the others, it's consumed him. He doesn't have anything else outside of this from the sounds of it. And all of this begs the question, what the hell happened, Bruce? You were the well-adjusted one. Compared to the others, you're a shining beacon, a model of mental health. Now you're angry and tired and shit, I feel like I need to move you over into this category. How do we go from upbeat and easygoing to this? And one of the great things about this episode is that we never get a definitive answer to this question. I'm sure what happened to Barbara was a big part of it. And crime only looks to have gotten worse. I mean, it isn't explicitly stated in the episode that crime has gotten worse. But I mean shit, you don't go from driving this to driving one of these for no reason. If this is the vehicle you need to get around Gotham in, it's not a sign that things have gotten better. This was built for speed and maneuverability. This was built for war. It's got a damn cannon strapped to the side of it. Since we don't get a definitive answer, we're kind of left guessing as to what went wrong, what changed this guy so drastically. And if I had to guess, I don't think it was any one thing that changed this Batman from upbeat to grimdark. I don't think he experienced another tragedy either. Keep in mind, this is a continuity where both Jason and Tim never took up the mantle of Robin. He didn't lose these Robins, they just never existed. So we're not dealing with a death in the family type scenario. Even Alfred and Gordon are still knocking around. Chen is mentioned to still be alive, she's commissioner. Bennett too, he's chief of police. Yeah, all the main characters are alive and kicking. And there just isn't a sense of tragedy hanging over the other characters either. Oracle and Nightwing, they're bantering pretty much non-stop. Alfred's his usual glib self. No, it was something a lot less dramatic that changed this Batman. It was just age, man, and the nature of the work, and the toll it takes. Fighting the same war, day in and day out for over 20 years just wears you down. You get meaner, you get angry, and you become more jaded. Looking back at the earlier seasons, those episodes feel optimistic, and they should. Bruce was younger, he was relatively new to the game. He'd only been wearing the costume for 3 years when we meet him in season 1. He had that energy and that optimism, you know? Flash forward 20 years, that energy and optimism has faded. The reality has long since set in that this war is not going to end. It's only going to get harder the older he gets. This episode takes a real look at what this life does to a person and the cost of all of it, and it doesn't try to make it look nice. And that's powerful, man. Weisman took a show that was at its core a light-hearted adventure and then flipped it and asked a real question. What is the cost of living this life? And what does that look like? And this is why modeling this Batman on the Dark Knight Returns interpretation is so inspired, because it perfectly shows how youth and optimism gives way inexorably to the cynicism of old age. If this show had started out with Batman being his usual dour self like he's typically portrayed, and then we had this flash forward to the future where he's still dour, it wouldn't hit. Because from your perspective, Bruce wouldn't have changed, he'd still be the same. But here with Artifacts, it hits so much harder seeing Bruce like this, because you're used to seeing this guy as upbeat and optimistic. But then over the last 20 years, he had that beaten out of him to the extent that he's effectively become a different person. This guy is a cautionary tale to the others, to Oracle, and even more so to Dick, about how you shouldn't, can't, let this mission consume you. You need to know when to stop. You know what I also really appreciate? The more subtle stuff Weisman put in here. Take a look at this scene of Batman wailing on Mr. Freeze. Now compared to this scene of a much younger Batman fighting. Notice anything different? This Batman's fighting style has totally changed. He's not jumping around here. He's not his usual acrobatic self. He's older, so he's just not able to do that anymore. He's more of a brawler now, relying on brute strength and his mass to get the upper hand in a fight. This is actually something I wanted to see with Keaton's Batman in The Flash. Sure, it was great to see Keaton's Batman finally cut loose, but I wanted to see some concessions made by the writers to account for how old Keaton's Batman was. I actually want to see how old age affects these characters. Batman in his 30s is obviously going to fight differently when he's pushing 70. I want to see that decline in speed and strength, because that's interesting. I want to see how Bruce would have to change his fighting style to account for that, for not being as fast or as strong as he used to be. And we get that here. This guy really is hurting. He even comments on it. The episode even goes so far as to show that he's got some underlying condition that causes him to have severe headaches. Age has not been kind to this guy, man. You know, we've had TV series and movies depicting Batman in his prime, at the peak of his abilities. We've had other stories showing us what a young Batman who's just starting out looks like. We've seen Batman retire. Hell, we've seen stories where he retires and then he comes back. We've even seen Batman get his happy ending. But you know what we don't often get? What we don't get to see explored? A Batman who is past his prime, who needs to retire, but who refuses to hang it up, who can't hang it up, and just continues on even when everyone around him is telling him he needs to stop. A Batman who is in debilitating pain, but still keeps on. A Batman who has to work around the limitations that age brings. I want to see that show, man. We've gotten close. The idea has been touched on, but I want an animated series exploring that idea. And Artifacts gives you a look at how great a series like that could be. I said about Teen Titans in that How Long Is Forever video, and I said it about X-Men Evolution and Project Rebirth, and I'm going to say it here. There's still untapped potential in this story, man. A continuation of the Batman, of this Bruce's journey, that could go hard, man. Give me a season or two that bridges the gap between this, and then give me 5 more seasons of this guy out there cracking skulls on his own. You know, this has happened to me a few times. I'll be watching a show I like and then boom, out of nowhere the writers just break from the established formula of the series and deliver an absolute banger of an episode. I wish more writers did stuff like this. Just take a massive swing and do something totally different. Batman the Brave and the Bold, Chill of the Night is a great example of this too, man. A campy, lighthearted show that went hard for 1 episode and delivered a truly brilliant Batman story that still gets brought up by fans to this day. The writers on Legends of Tomorrow made a brilliant Dark Future episode once that dealt with legacy and loss and honestly took the Arrowverse in a really interesting direction. Easily a more interesting direction than the one the writers would eventually take that universe in. It was a unique idea, interesting new characters, and inspired new takes on existing ones. And the writers just never came back to it. The reason I'm bringing these episodes up is because I kind of want to make videos about episodes like this, talking about the potential of these stories, or these one-off story ideas that just got touched on once briefly and then never again. Let me know if this is something you want to see on this channel. Or shit, hit me up in the comments below with some suggestions. I love getting comments. I live for that shit. Anyway, like, share, subscribe and all that. And as always, thanks for watching.